What is going on, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls? Thank you for tuning in to another video. Cody with Panda Bass Fishing. Today, I'm going to extend on a video that we had previously about our winter baits, our favorite winter baits. And if you haven't seen, Paul already went over in depth some of them. If you haven't seen, Paul already went over. If you haven't seen, Paul already went over some of them. I'm going to tackle the rest of them a little more in depth. I'm not going to go real far because we have videos on these already, but I want to kind of tune more in depth to these in the winter as we did winter baits. Duh, it's cold, it's freezing. It's like 29 degrees right now. Yeah, so without further ado, let's do it. So, the last thing we have to go over on that winter bait video is, on our list, we've got Dropshot, Ned Rig, and Senkos. Weightless Senkos to be exact. Where should we start? I think we should start with the Dropshot. Let's not beat this dead horse too much, but I want to talk to specific winter Dropshotting. So, Dropshot in the winter. The best thing about that I think is that you lose a lot of that grass, you lose a lot of stuff that drop shots get snagged in. What that means for us is, like, you guys know, me and Paul love these. These are the owner cover shot hooks for drop shotting. They go in, they don't stick out because they're straight shanked. So you can fish these. I mean, you can almost punch with these with a drop shot. Okay, so around the springtime when the grass starts to grow back, through the summer when it's really thick, me and Paul love those. The good thing about wintertime, that stuff dries out, is you can get along with fishing open hook, like most people do. Northerners, you guys get away with it a lot more. This is just Trokar drop shot hook, but that's a good benefit because you do get a better hookup. Not saying that the cover shot hookup ratio is bad, because it's not, but you get a much easier hookup with these. Now, and when I say easier, I'm really just talking about the actual hook set. In the winter, I think one of the biggest things is that people are giving drop shot too much action. Now, throughout the rest of the year, me and Paul will preach that we don't like, most people sit there with a drop shot and just kind of shake it. That's a winter deal for us. Me and Paul will drag that thing, hop it, shake it. You've seen it in videos. You've seen us catch fish like that. In the wintertime, though, you really do, when that water starts getting cold, those fish start to get lethargic, you do kind of have to settle down. Now, there are things that help that. Like, I'm terrible at settling down. So, especially because you can now go to this nose hook, as we talked about, just with a regular drop shot hook, and that gives your bait more action rather than having, you know, the cover shot, which takes up more of the plastic, and you have to impart more action yourself. When it's nose hook, that thing already has much more action, so you kind of got to be careful. So, the way that I like combat that is I use a smaller bait in the wintertime, just because by nature it's not going to have as much action. Now, this is the Slim Shake. You've heard me talk about this worm a lot. I really like it. It's the Googan Bait Slim Shake worm for shaky head design, but I use it in a drop shot all the time. What I'll do, and this is, I'm literally just using this because this is something I would do on the boat because I'm too lazy, and it was what I had in the house right now, and I didn't want to go out to the garage because I'm lazy. So this is what I would do on the boat. I would take something like this, and I would cut it. And I would cut it down here. Right about there. Just so I have this little, 3-inch section left. Maybe a little bit more. Maybe 4-inch. And nose hook that. Just to give it a smaller presentation. That smaller presentation is less action. Because if you have this big thing making a lot of, wiggliness down there, it might be a little too much for the bass in those really cold situations where they're really lethargic. If you don't find that on your lake, that they're real lethargic and they're willing to eat something bigger, absolutely do it. Because that's another thing about wintertime is, like, fish are willing to move farther for a bigger bait. That's why big swim baits, we talked about those in the wintertime, are awesome because fish will move farther if they think they're going to get a meal that has more calories. So if you think you can keep this thing dead stuck, because it will move on its own, basically just the shaking of your hand holding that rod, not trying to move at all, will move this thing enough. If you can do that, absolutely use a full bait. For me, I like to go smaller. It just doesn't quite move as much in the water, like I said. So that's just a little trick I wanted to point out to you guys. Something I see in the wintertime is just too much action. So something I see in the wintertime is just guys using too much. A lot of times, literally, you can cast that thing out and let it soak and kind of just every once in a while just maybe even just reeling up your slack because your boat's drifting or whatever it is, or the wind's, blowing it and moving it. There's all kinds of things that move drop shot. So let's talk about now where we're fishing these in the wintertime. Obviously, great off rock piles, right? That's where everybody fishes drop shot. Wood piles. If you're going to go to wood or timber, you might want to move back to that cover shot. It doesn't necessarily lose its place in the winter. Also, those fish that are staying up shallow that are still maybe more a little lethargic, obviously because it's wintertime, go with that cover shot so you're not getting snagged as much. Those shallow trees that are sunk, but they're, still in, 6-7 feet of water. Go to the cover shot. It's just going to save you guys. You're not going to lose any fish because of it. You just need to be mindful that you need to, give it a little bit of a hook set instead of just reel setting like you would with a railing. So, I think that just about covers drop shot. Main points. Slow down. If you feel like you can't slow down like me because you're an idiot, like me, do a smaller bait. If you can, use a big bait. Focus on places like deep. When you're deep, focus on rock piles because those rocks will hold heat longer from the sun, assuming your water is clear enough for the sun to penetrate far enough. Unless you're talking like 30, 40 feet, still something that the fish are going to hold to. It's no different than any time of the year, guys. Changes in the bottom, rock piles, brush piles, road beds, sunken road beds, anything that's different on the bottom. With, especially with our graphs now, a lot of you guys have the new graphs, you have live imaging. You can see when you find those fish, drop shot will almost always get it done. You just got to kind of figure out how they want it that day. So let's go something else that no one wants to talk about, no one wants to use. The Ned Rig. I talked about it a little bit in that video before. The turd. Literally, it's half a Senko with, I only basically use 1/8 ounce. These are the Z-Man Shroomz Heads or whatever they're called. I always use 1/8 ounce. I don't feel like there's any difference, any reason to use a heavier one. Like, I guess if I was going to fish this in 15, 20 feet of water, 30 feet of water, I might not have the patience and want to go to a 1/4 ounce, but I only buy 1/8 ounce. It's so small, it sinks fast enough. Just be a little more patient. That's how I am. You can feel the bottom with this just as fine in pretty deep water, I feel. There's not a lot to be said about this. This is a do-nothing bait. Literally, this is a hard bait for me to fish because you literally cast this thing out and have some lemonade. There's nothing to do. I mean, if you're pulling this out, it's because the day has gone to the dogs. There's just nothing you can do. You couldn't buy a bite, and now you've picked up this thing. And I'm talking for largemouths. Smallmouths seem to really love this thing, fished fast, and it's just something they'll target in on. I guess they think it looks like a goby maybe. But for largemouth in particular, like when you go to this, it's because you can't get a bite. And it's literally cast and chill and wait. And maybe 2 or 3 minutes into your cast, you might give it like a little shake and drag just to see kind of what's around on the bottom. And that's it. What I didn't talk about with the drop shot, which I'll talk about now because it's the same rod and reel setup that I use for this, and that's going to be medium light spinning tackle, guys. Medium light is really good for drop shot, for Ned Rig, and for the next thing I'm going to talk about. So we'll go over that at the end. But the Ned Rig, it's a do-nothing. There's not a whole lot I can talk about with it. The best thing is you can fish this all over the water column. It's great up shallow. I've caught fish in this, but in 2 feet of water, in the middle of a storm, actually. We couldn't buy a bite that day, except Paul caught a catfish on a spoon. Pretty awesome. The only fish we caught that day was on a Ned Rig. Middle of a storm. 2 feet of water. It is what it is, guys. The reason it gets here is because it catches fish. It doesn't seem like it because this thing doesn't move hardly at all. but the thing catches fish. That's why it has a place in the winter. Because sometimes you got to have 5x3, right? So it gets it done on some situations. Now, the Senko. I want to make another point, actually. I don't ever buy Ned baits. Baits designed to be Ned, they're like really short Senkos. I always just cut Senkos in half. We have so many Senkos that it's like they're coming out our ears. We should buy stock. So I don't ever buy them because I just cut them. And if you see the egg sac on a Senko right there, if you just cut right here, it's literally the perfect size for a Ned Rig. Last thing I'm going to say about the Ned Rig, because nobody cares. Just kidding. Let's talk about the Senko. The Senko is one of those baits that plays all year round. We all know, right? It's probably won more tournaments than any bait on the planet. It's probably won more money for bass fishermen than anything on the planet. It's probably one of the greatest bass baits ever to be made. Every company makes one. Yamamoto does it best, in my opinion. It's boring. But in the wintertime, I think this thing shines. In one place, you can fish this in two places. But in the wintertime, for me, this thing shines up shallow. Now, what I mean by that, some days in the winter, we might get a warmer night or a warmer day leading into a warmer night, and you might have more fish up shallow than you normally would. I'm not talking about those resident fish that are there, even though they chomp this thing. I'm talking about maybe like a warm spell, and it could be just like 8 degrees warmer, just enough to change the water to get them less lethargic and moving around. You'll get fish that will kind of come back up a little shallower. Pitching this thing around weightless, either wacky or Texas rigged, is amazing in the wintertime. It naturally falls so slow. It naturally has almost no action. You know, if it falls wacky, you know, it gives you a little bit of this on the way down. And if you're pitching it in Texas rigged, it kind of just gives like a little kind of random fall. It's literally the perfect winter bait. You don't have to do anything with it. It does all the action on itself. You guys know, you've fished it. So I want to go into three. There are two different. The wacky, obviously. I don't have a standby. No, I'm out because I lose too many wacky rims. I'm just going to use this one. It's okay. You understand. I shouldn't even have to show this. The wacky. It's right through the middle. Right on the other side of the egg sac. Boom. Obviously. Pitching this thing up shallow. Just like you would any other time of the year. But in the wintertime, especially when you get those warm trends randomly through your winter, this really comes to play up shallow. Now, wacky, that's the one thing I want to talk about. Really, what I really wanted to get into about this was round bend versus EWG. Some people are like super debating in this. I don't really care at all, to be fair. Typically, I use a round bend, and I don't know why, but I do. And really, the only difference is that the Texas rig comes all the way through, and you have, obviously, you're using an EWG, and the round bend, you have a smaller gap. I don't really notice, I've never noticed ever in my fishing career that a round bend gives me a less hookup ratio when it comes to a Senko, because the bait's so thin anyways. So back to basics, I'm going to show it real quick. This is your round bend. These are 3/0 round bends, or these are 2/0 round bends. Super simple, guys. With that, you come with the round bend, you come down at an angle. I'll do it really quick. At an angle, leave it a little bit, whoop, pull her through, up, over. You can look to see where this thing's going to go. Pinch it. Now you see how it lays on there. It lays to lay straight. Your hook is at an angle. So instead of coming all the way through, all you're doing is taking it, poking it, and pulling it. And it doesn't come all the way out. Okay? It just kind of sits there. Boom. And it's right under the surface. That's your round bend. I know most of you guys are turning this off right now because this is super simple, but some of you guys don't know. With an EWG, you literally take the thing out, you come straight down, straight into the bend, out, around, pull it up, sink it in, and you'll notice with an EWG, that hook, when this worm is straight, that hook also is perfectly straight. So what you do is you come in right where it's at, come in perfectly 90 degrees straight through till you come out. Boom. You guys know it's Texas rigged, right? Pull a little skin, let that thing slide back up on there. You guys know how to do it. And then you're tucked. This way is easier, I think. I can get this done faster on the boat with an EWG, but it just seems like when I'm getting ready and I rig up a rod that I'm going to throw this on, I always throw a round bin on. I don't know why. I truly don't care. I don't notice any difference when it comes to the Senko. Now, when you're talking about anything else, like pitch and soft plastics, like creature baits and stuff, of course, EWG, they're thicker, you need it. But to be honest, like, that difference is like almost null and void, in my opinion. Whatever you're comfortable with. Maybe it's whatever you have. Now, see, I just threw that EWG in with my round bends. Not that it matters. Kind of does. It's going to drive me nuts. Whatever you have. Don't think you guys got to go out and buy these round bends, or you got to go out and buy EWGs to fish with Senko. You don't need to. But don't overlook those shallow fish in the winter, especially with Senko. It's literally the perfect bait for it. It's the perfect bait for wintertime because it does all the work, and it does the work perfect. It falls slow. Its action is less. It's a pretty good size. You can even move up. These are regular 5-inch Senkos, right? These are 5-inch Senkos in green weenie. You can move up. You can go to that 7-inch Senko. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about, guys, for these baits that we talked about in this video is your rod and reel setup and your line. I'm always using, for all three of these baits, any of my finesse stuff, medium light rod, usually a little on the longer side, 7'3" to 7'6". That's usually where I like to be. I like a 2000 series reel or smaller, depending on what company it is. The Daiwa Exceller that I use a lot is actually their 1500 size. I like a little smaller stuff. I know now guys are going to the big ones because they can get more line on it. I just don't see the problem with that. I want my setup to be, like, I'm sitting there holding this a lot of time, dead still. I want it to be as light as possible. So I like the smaller ones, 1500, 2000, depending on, you know, what company you're going with. Might be a 1000. And your line. I'm always 100% of the time braid to leader. I usually run about, depending on how clear the water is, I usually run about an 8 to 15 foot leader. And the 15 foot is not necessarily because of the water clear. It's just so that if I break off, I don't have to retie uni to uni knot or the FG knot or whatever line to line knot I'm tying. Again, that's a lazy thing. So I can just keep tying all day and I don't ever have to tie another line to line knot on the boat. And typically we're using like 15, 20 pound braid. Again, depending on your company. That YG stuff that Paul uses, that's like 30 pound and it has the same diameter as like 15 pound normal braid. So 15, 20 pound braid, somewhere in there. And I always go to, I do the 7 pound FC Sniper from Sunline, 8 pound if they don't have 7 pound for some reason, but I have a giant spool of it and it's only for my leader, so I don't really ever run out of it. But I use a 7 pound. There's a cool video. I don't even know who did it now, but there's a cool video about like the percentage of action you get going from 8 pound to 7 pound. It's like 15% more action. And maybe in the winter, that's not what you want. Stick with the 8 pound. But I know we'll go up to 10 pounds on the leader because we're pitching that stuff with that cover shot into some really dire situations. So you might need a little bit more. But that's it, guys. Braid to leader, medium light, kind of long. As far as your reel, whatever spinning reel you guys like. Again, I like a small one just because I'm holding that thing a lot usually for a long period of time. And that's the setup, guys. Real simple. So get out there, try some new stuff. I hope this video helped. Guys, if you haven't done this already, subscribe to the channel, leave a like on the video, comment, let us know what you guys think. And if you haven't done so, also hit that bell so you'll never miss a video. Also, Bagabull.com, @Bagabull on Instagram for the best beef jerky on the planet, possibly the galaxy, because we don't really know what aliens have yet, but it's probably not good. So, Bagabull, best beef jerky, great snack for the boat, for the bank, wherever you're fishing. Code is DP10, 10% off at checkout. It's perfect. You order over $50, your order's free. It's beautiful. That's lots of jerky. Free shipping. 10% off. Go get it. Until next time, guys, I'm out.